Welcome to Washington in Focus, your source for the week's top stories in the state of Washington. I'm Cole Lauterbach, managing editor for the Center Square Newswire service. This week, we'll be discussing Governor Jay Inslee finding himself on the other side of an environmental law dispute, Seattle's police chief stepping down amid lawsuits and other controversies, and a central Washington school district taking emergency action to keep cash flowing, and above all, solar panels in sunny Western Washington. That's ahead on Washington in Focus. I'm Cole Lauterbach.
Are you tired of news that puts politics over people? At the nonprofit Franklin News Foundation, we believe in putting people over politics by delivering nonpartisan news and audio content that serves you, the American taxpayer. With Franklin News Foundation, you can read fact-based, state-focused news for free at thecentersquare.com. You can listen to civil, balanced conversations between policy experts through our podcast network at americastalking.com. Or you can get in-depth news on K-12 education spending, curriculum, and school safety at chalkboardnews.com. It's all free through Franklin, where we put you, the American taxpayer, first in every story, episode, and conversation. And it's only possible through our supporters. Together, we can produce content that puts people over politics and brings Americans the news they deserve. Become a supporter today at franklinnews.org/donate. Once again, that's franklinnews.org/donate.
Welcome back to Washington in Focus. I'm Cole Lauterbach. Now, let's jump into the headlines. Just south of the Tri-Cities in eastern Washington is the site of a proposed wind farm. The problem is that despite the massive program being approved and expected to have started construction in 2021, there's nothing built. Still an empty field. Investigative reporter TJ Martinell examined the issue. What is the exact holdup here, TJ?
Well, so the clean energy projects and any projects related to energy that are of a certain size have to go through a state council that looks at it and then gives certification that is then sent to the governor. And what happened is, for this one, the Horse Heaven Clean Energy Center, they have been working with the council. The council revised the project and made it smaller than what it was originally proposed to be, and then sent it to Governor Jay Inslee. And Inslee sent it back for reconsideration. And one of the things that he wants to do is he wants the project to go back to a larger size. And that involves curtailing or rolling back some of the environmental regulations or environmental protections that are in place under the proposal that the council was going to go with.
So what Inslee's proposing seems like even as wind farms go, seems like a pretty large proposal. This would be a significant wind farm.
Yes, it would be the largest in the state as of right now. And the other part of it is it would cover areas that are considered by the local residents to have very significant natural beauty and scenery, because it involves the Horse Heaven Hills.
So then, but also too, you've put in there in your story, you said that the worry environmentally is that these windmills will put local wildlife in danger, right? Hawks specifically.
Yeah. So there's historic hawk nest sites, and they put buffer zones around it. So I believe it was within half a mile of these sites, the wind turbines were not allowed to be installed. And so what Inslee wants them to do is do other types of mitigation to work around it so that they can have these wind turbines closer to these nest sites.
Other type of mitigation, like big nets? What is he suggesting?
There's a bunch of criteria. It's really technical, but for people who are not deeply involved in the project, effectively what he's doing is he's arguing that they need to have less environmentally stringent standards for this project.
It's like with Governor Gavin Newsom in California. He had been pushing to get housing, affordable housing put up, but he kept getting washing up against the rocks of his own state environmental laws. Inslee now is finding himself doing the exact same thing, isn't he?
Yeah, and this is one of the complaints that one person I interviewed for the story said, is that would he be as accommodating regarding environmental regulations if this was something other than a clean energy project? If it was, for example, some sort of refinery,
new business or something, right?
Business, something that would potentially impact wildlife and whatever type of species that's going on. An example might be the Lower Snake River dams. They've invested millions of dollars in making them to accommodate the salmon that go up it and down it during the different types of the years to reduce the number of salmon that are killed. And yet they're still calling for them to be dismantled in order to save these salmon species. In contrast here, he's not showing the same type of concern for these hawks.
Yeah, so the locals are kind of saying, well, you're all in favor of these environmental laws when they aren't inconvenient for your other environmental initiatives. And you've seen this all over the country too, is when, I guess it's the not in my backyard, the NIMBY aspect of these wind farms is that you'll see politicians push and push and push for them as long as they're not off of the coast of their Martha's Vineyard villa.
Right. This is actually, I recall back when the Clean Energy Transformation Act was being debated on the Senate floor, there was a senator from Central Washington who was complaining about how all the windmills that were taking up the landscape were being installed in their region, not in Western Washington. His point was, when you install them there, then we can talk.
And then we saw that at the federal level too, where they were trying to offer federal legislation that would subsidize wind energy. And they said, well, this isn't going up off the coast of Manhattan. This is being put up in what they refer to as flyover country, rural parts of the Midwest and other areas is where all those subsidies would go. And then it would get stopped as soon as they said, well, what about putting it off of the shore of Coney Island? Well, we don't want to do that, right? Then you get all of a sudden people decide that they start changing their tune pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It doesn't help their argument, right? For the environmental point of renewable energy when they're saying, well, I don't want this. I don't want to see it out my window.
Yeah. There's also other aspects of this project process that has drawn controversy. One of them is basically the local governments will have to issue permits for the construction to begin. And if this project, as certified by the governor and the council, violates any state environmental regulations, the county or the local governments are the ones that are going to be legally liable. And under our State Growth Management Act, which was passed in the early 1990s, you can sue even if you don't live in the area affected and even if you lack standing. So somebody in Eastern Washington can sue somebody in Western Washington or a government, local government, or whatever it is. So this is where the one person I talked to who was from the Yakima County Commission, commissioners said they're not going to be issuing any more permits for this project until the issue gets resolved. And the other issue that's very interesting is the question of where the water is going to come from for this project, because they're going to need water for the construction. They're also going to need water for the maintenance and continued operation use. They do not have access to water right now. They've tried to get it. And water rights is a very, very complicated issue in our state because of the way that it's set up. And so there's some who feel it's inappropriate to be advancing this project when they haven't even gained access to water. And this is also they're going to get the water from the Yakima Basin, which is ostensibly, and this is an area that is already trying to keep up with water supply demand for people who live there. So the concern is that this water that would be otherwise used to support the population is going to get diverted for this project in South Central Washington.
Well, and it's common in other states, especially in the Southwest, where you can't put one shovel in the ground until you prove to the local jurisdiction that you have an adequate water supply for, say, a new residential neighborhood for X number of years. I know that in Arizona, there's places where they require 100 years of water supply to be guaranteed before you can even start a new neighborhood. So yeah, that is definitely a major roadblock beyond the hawk issue.
Yeah.
Thank you, TJ. Beyond that fact that they can't seem to keep officers from leaving the force, the Seattle Police Department is now seeing another departure. Seattle reporter Spencer Pauly has the story of the force's highest officer now stepping down. This resignation might come as too much of a surprise, though, right, Spencer?
To answer your question, I think it's important to understand the context behind Chief Adrian Diaz's resignation here. Within the past 30 days or so, as Seattle Police Department has seen some real internal issues come about. Chief Diaz was included in a $5 million tort claim filed by 4 female officers within SPD. These officers allege sex discrimination, sexual harassment, and a hostile work environment within the department. So while it may not be surprised to see Diaz step down as a result of this claim, it does raise some eyebrows to see this occur just a month afterwards while an independent investigation is underway.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the normal common sense thinking person says, well, you're under investigation for all these bad things, and now you're put on some sort of special assignment. Right. There was a lot of questions at that news conference of the mayor. But you know what? The mayor did seem to defend the now former police chief. What was the phrase he kept using? Really good guy or something like that, right?
He multiple times, Mayor Harrell referred to him as a good human being.
Yes, good human being.
And called Diaz a friend of his multiple times during the press conference. It was quite a scene, to be honest with you. Some of the questions asked, was there any particular event that caused this? And Mayor Harrell said there was not one straw that broke the camel's back in this case. Just kind of dodging around these questions, I suppose. But, Mayor Harrell really, he referred to some of Diaz's accomplishments since, he took the reins as the chief 4 years ago. Right. Citing, overall crime decreasing so far this year. I guess that's to be determined. We saw SPD launch a dual dispatch program where a team of mental health professionals go to a scene. That's a pilot program, so we're not quite sure how that is going to work out yet. And, recently we got an interim contract with the police union to increase pay as a way to help kind of improve police recruitment and retention, I suppose. Yeah, right. Well, and you say that this new change really comes, it couldn't come at a worse time for this department. Do they still have the lowest number of officers per since the 90s? Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's still on. Continuingly to increase too. Earlier this week, SPD revealed its latest statistics that showed that the department had about 1,053 officers at the end of the first quarter of this year, which is just 21 less than 1,074 officers that were budgeted in the 2024 adopted budget. And in the first 3 months of the year, Seattle Police Department managed to hire only 11 sworn officers, which falls short of the projected 31 hires the department was anticipating. And so, in turn, the department is now adjusting its projected hires from 120 through the year to 100. And Spencer, too, you've dove into this before, where it's fewer officers does not necessarily mean it costs less to run the department. What you run into is there always has to be a certain number of officers out in the field at certain times. So what you hit is a massive amount of overtime. Huge. I mean, already this year, the Seattle Police Department's projected to go over its budget for, dedicated overtime. This is because you need a certain amount of people on patrol. I've already talked about this before, where some of your investigators within the department are just now moving to your daily patrols. Right. Within the past couple of years, Seattle Police Department is continually to go over its overtime budget. And it keeps increasing since 2022, when the officer shortage became more and more, prominent. And now the city's called in the old sheriff, which sounds very old west of them. Right. But how is she approaching this assignment? So Sue Rohr, a former King County sheriff, is taking over as the interim police chief. She was there at the press conference, and they made it very clear that she will not be a candidate for the permanent position. So a little bit of deja vu with some of the other things I've talked about, including the King County Regional Homelessness Authority's search for a permanent CEO. So here I go again. But Sue Rohr said she wants to have a brutally honest conversation with all officers to understand their needs. This is something she said she was going to do the day she starts, which is as of today's recording, Thursday. So she will be tasked with improving recruitment and building trust between the police department and the community, which is continuing to divide, especially with not only the Diaz allegations, but last week we saw one of the assistant police chiefs be put on paid administrative leave for something we're not quite sure yet. We're still inquiring about what that is, but it's all coming up now.
It's like whack-a-mole for issues with the Seattle Police Department. So
within the last 30 days, too.
It's been crazy. Yes. Thank you, Spencer. We'll continue to follow this ever, evolving situation here and keep you informed as they come out. Moving along, we've been following the ongoing story of Moses Lake School District's financial woes. This week, the district appears to have hit a breaking point. Eastern Washington reporter Tim Clouser has been sitting on these meetings. Give a little background into just how this district has found itself running so short on cash, Tim.
Yeah, Cole, this all started with the district's failed maintenance and operations levy. The levy reached the ballot in February and April, but failed both times, leading to a loss of $4 million in revenue. When the district realized that, it reached out to North Central Education Services District, who did a deeper dive into the district's accounting. That further look showed that in addition to that $4 million loss, the district is also missing out on around $8 million in state funding. And on top of that, an accrual booking error led district officials to believe it had $13 million on hand when actually it only had around $2 million. So the district initially reacted to this loss of funding with a big reduction in force. Earlier this month, they announced that it issued around 100 non-renewal notices for educators in the district. But now they're taking additional steps. Last night, the district announced that it's now going to cut an additional 85 classified staff members.
And now the board is looking at further emergency measures in terms of accounting, correct?
Yeah, last night's announcement came just before a vote that's supposed to happen tonight. Tonight, the school board will vote on whether or not to use an interfund loan just to make its payroll for May. Because the district is so short on cash, it might not be able to make its payroll for May. The district ended April with around $2 to $3 or so million in cash. However, that still didn't leave enough for the monthly payroll, leaving the district roughly $2.2 million short at the end of the month. So this interfund loan would allow the district to keep the lights on, keep paying its payroll for this month, but it doesn't expand or provide funding for next month. So additional measures may be needed to take in the future to keep that payroll going.
I keep hearing this, and it shocks me that they're not, with situations like this of mismanagement and major accounting errors. And I mean, they can't control the fact that they lost the ballot measure for the extra funding. But at the same time, it's like when you have financial missteps of this size, how has no one lost their job yet? That's the one thing that you keep reporting on this stuff. And that's the one thing I keep asking myself, right?
Well, one person has lost their job or is on administrative leave, and that's Monty Sabin, the district's acting superintendent. Right now, they have an interim in place, but that was a major decision for the district and took place, I believe, a day after the initial 100 cuts were made. So he's out of office. Additionally, the district has cut 6.5 district level positions, which accounts for a 15.5% budgetary reduction at that district level. But they're still looking to make additional cuts. That first round of cuts, the first 100 cuts, saved the district around $13 million. It's unclear how much these additional 85 classified cuts will make, but additional cuts can still be made. A prior summary of recommended reductions noted that there could be additional cuts to extracurricular, college preparation programs, facility usage, among many other things. So it's likely that the district is still looking at those options, but given that staffing constitutes 80% of the district's budget, those cuts probably aren't nearly attractive as the reduction in force.
Still no school closure talk yet, though, right? And I mean, I don't even know if at an immediate need basis, if that would even help, right?
No, there hasn't been any talks of closing any of the district's schools at this point, but I wouldn't say it's out of the question. The school district is going to continue to monitor the situation with North Central Education Services District, but they haven't said whether that would lead to additional cuts or not.
Such a sad situation for a school district. Thank you, Tim. Solar panels seem to work best when it's sunny, right? I mean, that's pretty common knowledge. One would think that in Western Washington, an area that's not known for its sunshine, wouldn't put solar panels high on the list of renewable energy sources. But as Capitol correspondent Carlene Johnson reports, the state seems to be interested in making them more affordable to own anyway. Tell us about this program, Carlene.
Yeah, so for a couple of years at least, we've been hearing the ads on radio and seeing them on TV, basically, we'll pay you to put solar panels on your roof. You'll make money, so why wouldn't you do it? But the issue here in Western Washington is the fact we just don't get a lot of super sunny days, and we're pretty far north. So even on the super sunny days, the energy that rooftop solar panels absorb and then translate right into clean energy is much less than you see in other parts of the country, like the sunny state of Arizona. It seems to make a lot more sense there than here.
Well, and even in Arizona, by contrast, Arizona and Western Washington are the diametric opposites, where Arizona's valley is the sunniest place in the country, with the exception of like Death Valley and a couple other places that just aren't inhabited. But Western Washington, not only, and you made a good point, where Western Washington is very cloudy because you've got the precipitation coming off of the shore, but it's also far north where sun or shine, clouds or not, your sunsets are going to be earlier all year. And, come wintertime, you're going to have a much shorter day, narrowing down the ability to garner energy regardless if it's cloudy or not. And so in terms of energy efficiency and the use and the overall thought of like, okay, this would be a good place to do it. Even if you do have a solar panel or a ceiling or a way to get those solar panels perfectly positioned, you're going to be hedging how much power you actually do generate off of those solar panels.
My guess is thinking about why would the federal government even give us subsidies? And we've got this new $156 million coming from the federal government for Washington homeowners to put these rooftop solar panels on. I just did a little searching on my own because I was curious, thinking like, if you go to Google right now and you search, I live in Washington state. Can I get tax subsidies, government subsidies to put rooftop solar on my home? Well, then, that seems like an innocuous enough question. You might start at a government site then, right? And then
sure, right.
After you get layers down, pretty soon I was left with put in all your information. I got redirected 19 times until I got down to a few companies that will directly contact me with quotes. And I kid you not, Cole, when I say my phone rang 11 times in about a 3-minute span from these companies that obviously are connected with the government, right? So they've gotten subsidies at taxpayer expense to even be in operation. And now additional, subsidies being offered. And then people forget those subsidies, it might sound like it's federal money. It's disconnected. It's not me, the Washington taxpayer, paying for it. Well, for crying out loud, of course, it's coming out of all of our back pockets to get these subsidies.
The solar panel companies are wildly aggressive, as you learn the hard way. For them, it's the only one who is, it's profitable for in Western Washington because once they get the solar panels installed, they get that money and they're out the door. They don't have to worry about how well or poorly it works.
That's right.
Now, you talked to the Washington Policy Center about this, and they've got a great environmental expert over there. What did Todd have to say about this?
Yeah, Todd Myers, who heads up research at the Center for the Environment at WPC, basically said, he explained it simply this way. He says it's lemonade stand economics. That's where, the parents pay all the cost. The kids get all the benefit and they go, woo, this is great, mom and dad. But the reality is the economics simply don't work that way because overall then the family lost money.
I would love to see the estimation of how many years it would take of you selling solar energy in Federal Way, Washington, how long it would take for you to make the money back on that federally subsidized solar panel. That probably is a number that will last longer than I plan to be alive. That's for certain. Thank you, Carlene. It's a fascinating look at the economics of solar panels in Western Washington. And a big thank you to our journalists for sharing their stories as well. Stay up to date on these and more at thecentersquare.com. I'm Cole Lauterbach. And until next time, this has been Washington in Focus.